Welcome back to my channel. I am the Crochet Hermit. In today's video, we are making a crochet tote bag. Grab your hook and make a slip knot. We are going to chain 31 chains. I have completed chaining my 31 chains, and now inside the second chain from the hook, I'm going to place a single crochet. I have a tutorial on how to crochet the main stitches if you need it. And now you're going to grab a stitch marker and mark the top of that first stitch. And then you're going to grab another stitch marker and mark the bottom of that stitch. It's going to look like this. And now from this point on, we're going to continue to place single crochets inside each of these chains until we reach the last chain, which is chain 30. This is the 30th chain. I'm going to place 2 single crochets inside this last chain. 1. And inside that same hole, that same chain, I'm going to place another single crochet. That is 2 single crochets inside that last chain. Now I'm going to take this work and flip it to the other side because now we're going to work single crochets down this side. So I do have this extra string from when I made my slip knot in the beginning. I will be single crocheting over it. So this right here is going to be your first stitch on the other side. This is technically stitch 31. So inside this stitch right here, right at the very beginning, stick your finger in there to help you identify it. We are going to place a single crochet. And guys, I know it's a little hard to see these stitches. That's why I'm telling you, if you stick your finger inside the stitch, it's easier to find that stitch. Inside the next stitch, make sure you're not going back inside the stitch you already worked in. Make sure you're inside the next stitch. I'm going to place a single crochet. And now I'm going to continue working single crochets inside each of these stitches until I reach the last stitch, and that is going to be the stitch that is marked with the stitch marker. Also guys, this is like my 3rd time recording this video. I have tried recording this tutorial with different colors, and the stitches still show up like this on camera because it is a fuzzier yarn, but don't let that discourage you. The more you work with this yarn, the easier it gets. I've made it to the last stitch, which is the stitch with the stitch marker. I haven't placed anything inside of it yet. We are going to remove that stitch marker and we are going to place 3 single crochets inside that last stitch. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to take my stitch marker and mark that last stitch. This is row 1. You should have a total of 63 stitches. And now to finish this row, we are going to slip stitch inside the first stitch of the row, and it's already marked. So we're going to insert our hook inside that first stitch and place a slip stitch. So this is our last stitch in the row, and this is our first stitch in a row. I'm going to show you why it's important to mark these stitches if you're a beginner, because this is going to come in handy. So to start row 2, we're going to chain 1 inside that first stitch with the stitch marker. We are going to place a back loop only single crochet. So here, let me remove the stitch. I'm going to show you what the back loop is. So normally we would insert our hook inside the full stitch, but we're not going to do that. We're going to insert our hook inside the back loop only. I'm going to show you again. This is the full stitch, and this is the back loop. We are going to place single crochets inside the back loop only. This is the first stitch of round 2. Remember, we always mark our first stitch. Now we're going to continue working single crochet back loops only all the way around till we reach our very last stitch. I've made it to my stitch marker, which is the last stitch. I'm going to remove it and place a single crochet back loop only. Because this is the last stitch in the row, I'm going to mark it with a stitch marker. You should have a total of 63 stitches. Alright, so this is why I have you guys mark your stitches. This is the first stitch in the row, and this is the last stitch. Now in between, you're going to see the chain 1 from the previous row and the slip stitch from the previous row. These are not considered stitches, so we will be skipping over them. The reason why I like to have you guys mark the stitch, especially if you are a beginner, is so you don't get confused and consider these stitches and work inside them. We are not working inside these are not considered stitches. So we're going to skip over these and we're going to slip stitch inside that first stitch of the row, and that should be the stitch with the stitch marker. So I'm going to place my slip stitch inside that first stitch. And that is how you finish row 2. Now another thing I want to talk about before we continue is if your project is kind of waving up and lumpy, just pull on it. Pull on it a little bit, don't pull on it too hard. Now for row 3, we are going to chain 1 and place a single crochet inside the first stitch, which is the stitch with the stitch marker. And we are working inside the full stitch, we're not working in the back loop. And because this is the first stitch, we will mark it with our stitch marker. We're going to continue working single crochets inside the full stitch, inside each stitch all the way around until we reach our last stitch, and that should be the stitch with your stitch marker. I've made it to my last stitch. I'm gonna place a single crochet inside that last stitch. And then I'm gonna mark it with a stitch marker. Remember, these are not stitches in between. So we're gonna skip over this and we're gonna insert our hook inside the first stitch of the row, which is a stitch with the stitch marker. And we're gonna place a slip stitch. Flip your work right side. This is the bad side. This should be on the inside, and this is the good side. For row number 4, we're going to repeat the last row. So we're going to chain 1 and place a single crochet inside the first stitch. Continue working single crochets inside every single stitch until you reach the last stitch of this row. I've made it to my last stitch. I'm going to place a single crochet inside of it. And now to complete this row, I'm going to slip stitch inside the very first stitch of this row to close this 4th row. I'm going to show you guys how to count your rows. Okay, so the row below the line is row number 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue to repeat the last row until you reach row 20. Make sure you mark your first and last stitch, and I will meet you back when I'm finished with my 20 rows. I have completed my 20 rows, and now I'm gonna cut the end of the yarn. If you plan on making your bag in one color, don't cut your yarn. But if you plan to use another color like I am, go ahead and get your scissors and cut the end of your yarn. Make sure to leave a long enough tail so we can weave it in at the end. Now we're going to grab our second color. for me, I'm using white. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. Insert it into that first stitch. Place a single crochet. It's gonna look like this. Because this is my first stitch, I'm gonna mark it. And now, like normal, we are gonna work single crochets all the way around. Nothing has changed, we're just using a different color. I'm gonna work all the way around until I reach the last stitch, and I'll meet you back at the last stitch. I've made it to my last stitch in this row. This is the stitch with the stitch marker. I'm gonna go ahead and place my single crochet inside there. And just like we did before, inside the first stitch of the row, we are gonna place a slip stitch. Continue to repeat row 21 until you have a total of 26 rows. Don't forget to mark your first and last stitch, and I will meet you back when I am finished with my 26 rows. I have completed all 26 rows, and now I'm going to cut the end of my yarn. Make sure to leave a long enough tail that you can weave in at the end. Remove your current stitch markers. Starting from the corner, you're going to count to 3 and mark the third stitch. 1, 2, 3. Mark your third stitch. Starting from that stitch marker, you're going to count to 6 and mark the 6th stitch. It should look like this. You're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Mark the third stitch from the corner, and then starting from the stitch marker, mark the 6th stitch. Your hook into the front where that first stitch marker is and pull up a loop with the yarn. And then you're going to chain 1 and place a single crochet inside that same stitch. And then from this point, we're going to continue working single crochets all the way down until we reach our other stitch marker. You should have a total of 6 single crochets when you are finished. This determines the width of our strap. This is roughly around 1.5 inches to 2 inches for the width of the strap. Chain 1 and turn your work. You're going to continue working rows of single crochet until you have a total of 70 rows in your strap. Make sure you are chaining 1 in between your rows, and I will meet you back when I'm finished with all 70 rows. I've completed my 70 rows of single crochet, and now we're going to take the end of the strap and attach it to this part of our bag right where our stitch markers are. you want to make sure that your strap is not twisted before you connect it. Let's make sure everything is faced the right way. The outside of the strap needs to match the outside of the bag, and the inside of the strap needs to match the inside of the bag. We are going to be working from the inside. You are going to insert your hook inside the stitch marker to the right. And then you're going to insert your hook inside the very first stitch of the strap. And we are going to work a slip stitch. We're going to continue working slip stitches all the way down until we reach our last stitch marker. You should have a total of 6 slip stitches when you are finished. You are going to chain 1 and cut the end of your yarn. You can go ahead and remove all of your stitch markers. Grab your needle so we can weave in our ends. The goal is to hide your strings in between the stitches. You're going to continue sliding your needle in between stitches until you can no longer see the string anymore. I'm going to continue to weave in the rest of my ends off camera, and I will meet you back when I am finished. I finished weaving in all my ends off camera, and this is the finished look. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to those that support this channel.